Well, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Joe and Love. And here to talk Dynamite again, which concluded last night's. And Swerve got I would say, good surprise into who his opponent for Double or Nothing shall be. They were Winnipeg last night for Dynamite, and we saw the return of one Kenny Omega. Great to see him back. Great to see him back after a number of months out since late last year with diverticulitis. I mean, back when we seemed like it was going to be Jericho and him fighting for tag titles against Big Bill, Ricky Starks, and then found out that Kenny was not well, and since then he's been on the shelf with diverticulitis. Last night he returned. The angle situation from last night, concluding from last week's attack of Tony Khan, very good, very good. And, with Okada, with Jack Perry being tied into it, it looks well. Looks very well. Now, they explained why they weren't fired last week. Which is a good response. They explained this big green screen. But yeah, they explained why they weren't fired. They explained maybe an explanation for their reasoning. Perhaps we'll get that going forward as to why, because Matthew Jackson keeps saying, change the world. Well, hopefully we get a response as to what he means by that. But for now, what we got last night, that was a very solid, very good show. And now we got 4 matches official for Double or Nothing. And it's fun to see the way AEW processes. It's about half the card. One of the match seems to be all but confirmed, and that's Malachi Black for Sam Copeland, which we'll touch up on that in what was a very good match between Adam Copeland and Buddy Matthews. But yeah, I'd say Dynamite was very good. We had some filler in the middle of the show, which depends how they respond. But overall, the vibe around the show certainly flowed better than what it did last week. Nonetheless, thank you all for joining me on this fine Thursday. In what hour? By the way, so Backlash for WWE. For those interested, it is Saturday. So Usually I like to talk about SmackDown and Collision, but, which by the way I did not post a video, this week, but I'm thinking to do a Backlash review sometime Sunday night or Monday. So, keep up for that, guys. Nonetheless, we're here to talk about Dynamite. So, with that out of the way, let's touch up upon the matter and go over the show. So, Dynamite. So, Tony Khan alluded to a bit the other day, and he started to show it briefly. So they cut to him. He was in his prowess in the facilities of Jacksonville Jaguars War Room. He announced that he could not travel due to, his condition, his injuries, quote unquote, taken from the attack from the Elite. So, but he said he'll still be producing, and went over. So, while he's going over this, it was getting glitchy. So then we saw all of a sudden the Young Bucks as they cut out the feed of Tony Khan, or cut his feed, and they cut to them in the production truck. So they announced why they were fired after their attack last week. Mentioned ironclad founders contracts, and that they are basically allowed to take over the show or do control it when Tony Khan is not able to. So then they announced that they have a new intro. So, in which they uploaded, in which was hilarious. Very simple, but instead of the roster with the Elite, with Ospreay, Copeland, Mercedes, etc., Jericho, Swerve, it was just basically highlights of the Elite over the new intro, and it was hilarious, good, whatever you want to say, tying into that saying of Matthew Jackson saying he wants to change the world. Obviously they had to touch up more on that, but for now it kind of seems like a taking over the show, so to speak. Now, curious to see if they hire a GM, quote unquote, to run things for them. Same for Tony Khan. Does he, while he's still healing, does he hire someone to run things as he sees fit, as opposed to the elites? We shall see. But as far as that opening, that was spot on and good. So to start the show, then officially. So we got Swerve Strickland, the new World Heavyweight Champion. So Swerve, we know, last week it was not pretty in the reception and being, well, last week we had two or three things happen on the show first before we saw Swerve, and what did we get? Swerve versus Kyle Fletcher in a eliminator match for the world title, and Kyle Fletcher, he's, as much as I like his improvement, as much as I like seeing him in matches versus Brian and Kenny, etc., Ospreay, this match was not really needed. And the first thing we see of Swerve towering and just how he was portrayed, and then right after, well, not immediately right after, then I'm sure AEW felt the pushback, and then they tried Swerve for a promo for Saturday for Collision, and then their reasoning was the NBA playoffs, it's a way to get eyes on Swerve, and, because of how many tuning in from the NBA playoffs. Nonetheless, it wasn't great. I mean, Swerve and Claudio, first off, it was an okay promo, which led to a match, Swerve vs. Claudio, on Saturday, but didn't really do much for the grand scheme. So, it was not pretty, but the way he was portrayed last night at Dynamite was, just more significant, and I think we can agree better, more intriguing than how last week was. So last week, Swerve talked about fighting 3 times in a week, 3 different shows. That's the type of fighting champion they need. That's what they do not need are 2 cowardly, backhanded, undermining EVPs such as the Young Bucks. And they talked about last week, and he said he stands behind what he said about last week, and that was a bitch move, the attack on Tony Khan. But he did say that I'll get to it down the road, but for now, time to see who he's going to face at Double or Nothing. And saying they don't know, he doesn't know. So he tells them to draw him down and says before you do so, be sure to wipe your feet before you step into whose house? Swerve's house. So, Young Bucks come over the big screen. Young Bucks talk about, well, maybe the success has gone to your head. All of a sudden now you're the world champion and you choose to badmouth your bosses. So they talk about thinking it's best to level with them, and why not they pick the best point for him at Double or Nothing. And they mention being one of the best Canadian pro wrestlers of all time. He's a former champion, and he's a guy that hasn't been around in a while. So Excalibur, know it after. So Nick said they see him in the go position. Saying he's ready to meet him. So then they say to his music in 3, 2, 1, go. And all of a sudden we see Christian Cage's music play, and was it fun to see? Fun to see. Fun to see. So Christian was out there with the Patriarchy, Mama Wayne, Nick Wayne, and Luchasaurus, aka Killswitch. And first of all, you cannot get a better first opponent for Swerve. One sec. Christian Cage, the former TNT champion. I've not seen him since the I Quit match versus Adam Copeland, but so I mean, right off the bat, nitpicking, if you will, but it's those things. So AEW has the rings back. They haven't really used them. But the fact is, with the rings here, Christian was unranked. That's the first thing. Last time I see him, he was unranked. I mean, even though they are ridiculous, and the fact that Orange Cassidy is number 2, I mean, the rankings are ridiculous. And thing is, the other thing is, yes, Chris Cage definitely is right opponent with what he mentioned. But also, last time we saw him, lost the I Quit match for Sam Copeland. So, to get into what he said, so Christian originally took the mic and said he hit Swerve in the face with it. Swerve trying for a comeback, but then obviously he hesitated when he saw Mama Wayne, and all of a sudden the beatdown ensued. Prince Nana was attacked. He got hit with a Wayne's World by Nick Wayne. Kill switch to Swerve on the world title, and just the patriarchy standing tall over Swerve and Prince Nana. So Christian mentions how he doesn't forget, saying how he doesn't forget how his son, or how many months ago Swerve broke into his son's gym, left him in a bloody mess. Hence, from months ago, Swerve and Arrow Fox, when they beat down Nick Wayne's gym. I also mentioned how Christian and Swerve were the tag team against Sting and Darby in that coffin match at All In, and Swerve lost for the team. Hence, Christian said Swerve embarrassed him. And along the way, he sees that Swerve has won the world title. Well, Christian says, well, there's not a better time than now to make Swerve pay for his mistakes. So, and the crowd was not great from Winnipeg. So, Christian mentioned how, so if you've been watching the NHL playoffs, the hockey playoffs, Colorado Avalanche beat the Winnipeg Jets in 5 games. So he talked about the Avalanche coming into Winnipeg Jets territory and taking away their championship dreams. He's going to walk into Swerve's house and rip the AEW World Championship out of his hands. He mentioned Swerve's story from last week about his daughter and how she feels like she doesn't know him, but Christian touted that once he's done with him, she's not gonna want to know him, and that in the end, she's gonna have a father that she can be proud of. So, Killswitch ripped out a bit of hair out of Swerve's head and gave it to Christian and Nick Wayne. And hearing at first it gave me a chuckle, but on the other hand it was like, I don't know. As some people were in the crowd chanting at Nick Wayne saying, "Eat it, eat it." Anyway, Christian held the title over his head. Went across Swerve, who was in pain, and there was that. I'm not gonna lie. As a fan of Christian, pretty much since forever, and from his work in AEW ever since he changed his character, I'd be lying. I think many would agree. I'd be lying if I didn't say I didn't. If I said I didn't, or pardon me, doesn't want Christian winning the world title at Double or Nothing. But thing is, Swerve, this is run. He got his moment at Dynasty. This is time. Christian will be a great first opponent for Swerve. Double or Nothing looks like it's shaping to be a fun aspect. And yeah. Much better than what last week's was. The House of Black. So, talked about their match at Dynasty, saying it went exactly how they pictured. Said some other stuff, and then they cut to the ring. So, Adam Copeland. So, it tallied against a member of the House of Black. So, of course, people were joking of, oh, it's Julia Hart. So, next up. So once Copeland got into the ring, we hear Malachi Black over the speaker saying, well, I know you wish it was me who accepted the challenge, but instead the mind games are much better. So then we hear the music play and had a feeling, and glad you're right, because Buddy is very underrated. And it's so good to see him wrestle. Buddy Matthews, one-on-one with Adam Copeland. This was a hard-fought, good match. And, Buddy Buddy doesn't wrestle by himself anymore, but when it happens, it's a good thing. And against Adam Copeland, definitely made for a fun match. So, yeah. And then Daniel after is pick or choose between pretty much everyone, but we'll talk about it. So, Copeland and Buddy, this one things kind of picked up. So, Copeland and Buddy, they had a mid-air collision. And Buddy was favoring his ribs. So, officials and whatnot, and then, so some concern over Buddy Matthews, his ribs, really the focal point of the match. So, cut back from break, they're fighting on top rope, and looked like Buddy was perhaps going for a Hurricanrana, but Copeland countered, and Copeland hit a mid-air impaler off the middle rope, or the second rope, whichever. And got a near fall out of it. So, Buddy then reeled off some offense, advanced back briefly, hit a beautiful jackhammer on Copeland for a near fall. So, Buddy then walked in a crossface, Copeland fell out, got a near fall, hit a Olympic slam for 2. Buddy, he hit a GTS on Copeland. He went for, at first I thought he was going to try to beat Copeland with his own move, going for a spear, but instead he went for a curb stomp, and Copeland shoved him out of the way off the ropes, and then Copeland hit a beautiful spear. 1, 2, 3, and Copeland defends basically the TNT Championship. So, there you go. So, fun match, like I said. So, now take after, because give or take. So, with the House of Black, we've seen it a number of times where with Julia, with Sky Blue, with Sting to a degree. Now with Copeland, story is House Black, spew the miss, and perhaps some people, or pretty much everyone, start to get a little darker. Not necessarily being a heel, aligning themselves, but they tend to be a little darker. So, but Nothing new, though, as Copeland went for some chairs and looked like he was going for a concerto on Buddy Matthews. Then the lights go out. They come back on. Malachi Black is next to Adam Copeland, and he was trying to go Copeland in the striking Buddy. And Buddy's on his knees, begging for the chair shot. Copeland looks like he's confused, thinking about it. So he had the chair over his head, and they turned to Black. And then lights again go out. They come back on, and Buddy and Black are gone. So there's that. I can tell people are not too fond of the lights going in and out numerous times. I can tell that, people are a little soursome of the repetitiveness of the House of Black, storylines. Nonetheless, it seems all for naught are all but confirmed. Next week we're going to get Adam Copeland versus Brody King. Should be a fun match in itself, but the way it's pictured, it seems like we're going to get Copeland versus Black at Double or Nothing. Copeland goes through the gauntlet of the House of Black to basically get to Black. We'll see. I mean, in the end, if the match is happening at Double or Nothing, Black pinned Malachi, or Black pinned Copeland. So, yeah, it seems all for naught. All for naught. So, Samoa Joe versus Isaiah Cassidy. Thing when people are talking about filler, so it was great to see that the former world champion Samoa Joe back on TV. Definitely a great thing. Now, what does he do perhaps at the pay-per-view? I'm not sure. But him in a match against Isaiah Cassidy, in which was basically a glorified squash match. It obviously did not mesh well with some people, and can understand why, because the first time we see Joe back, he's in a filler type of match, and he just lost the world title to Swerve at Dynasty, and no mention about Christian Cage, about Swerve. Yeah. So I get it if people are not happy. But either way, one thing that always makes or that Sony's happy about or funny is Samoa Joe's walkaway spot. Again, going back to TNA and Ring of Honor, one of the best spots you'll ever see. So Cassidy went for a tope over the top. Now, we've seen Joe in AEW dodge one of Darby Allin's hectic suicide dives, one of back from All In. He dodged the plancha from CM Punk, etc. But this one certainly was brutal to watch in different ways. So, like I said, Cassidy was going for a tope over the top. And what does Samoa Joe do? Simple. Just has to walk away. Just walks away, and as Samoa Joe did, and Cassidy landed hard on the outside. So, I mean, great continuity for Joe, but bad spot to look at if you're a fan of Isaiah Cassidy. But back in ring, Cassidy was able to recover. He landed a hot shot. Joe over top rope. In the end, though, Cassidy went for a monkey flip. But obviously the power and the size, Joe, too much. Swerve turned around, or Joe turned around, landed a few shots. Muscle buster. And that was all she wrote. 1, 2, 3. Samoa Joe wins. Does feel refreshing to see Samoa Joe win with a muscle buster again. I will say. Sky Blue. G challenge Will Nightingale to a match. A no DQ match. For the TBS title for Rampage. Because the other thing. So, the match was, or Rampage was 1 hour after Dynamite, I assume, because NBA playoffs or NHL, both are going on. So yeah. Anywho, so that was the main event of Rampage. Orange Cassidy. This was a mixed reaction, I would say, of a segment. So, excuse me. So, Orange Cassidy, we know, is basically feud now with Trent Beretta, as Trent attacked him those weeks ago after they lost to the Young Bucks, and then was attacked last week. Jacksonville parking lot brawl between Trent and Chuck Taylor for Rampage, and that had Orange Cassidy and Chris Allen are conflicted. So Cassidy was out there and he said he thought at the end of all of this, he thought Chuck Taylor and Trent, after all this be done and they got all this out of their system, they could be best friends again. That was not the case. As he announced that due to what Trent Beretta did, now it's weird because Chuck Taylor hasn't really done much like the last year or so. But Orange said that because of the actions from the parking lot brawl, he said Chuck Taylor will not be able to wrestle again. So he said, Trent, if I ever see you again, on cue, we hear Trent Beretta. He's on the stage. He's all proud. So Orange Cassidy, there's officials out there separating, and Trent's like making him out himself. He's selfish, all that. So they're separated. So Chris Statlander, the crowd, especially for this segment, it felt like a dud. And I get it because Orange Cassidy, Trent, and yeah. So then all of a sudden, I was confused, but then all of a sudden we see Don Callis out there. He's trying to mince words with Orange Cassidy, whispering something to him in his ear, and they walk off. And Trent does an Orange Cassidy thumbs up at the top of the stage. So Don Callis recruiting Orange Cassidy to be part of the family. I'm not sure. I just say that because I don't envision Orange Cassidy being a heel. Then again, with his gimmick, he could be a heel or face. But Tony Khan loves Orange Cassidy. Fans like Orange Cassidy. I'll be honest, I've been kind of fatigued of Orange Cassidy, especially as of late. Don Callis is a heat magnet with how much booze he gets everywhere. So I don't know, him being with Orange, it's just, you already have guys who look like killers with Takesha and Hobbs and Fletcher and Ospreay, and I don't know, it's just odd. But certainly the most intriguing thing Orange Cassidy has had for months, I would say. Just that one bit. So we're getting Trent versus Orange next week. So hopefully this feud's over with. Yeah. Next up. So, Young Bucks, they were backstage. Renee there wanted to ask the Bucks about the happenings. And the Bucks, said, "You look nice, how's John?" We didn't see John Moxley on the show. I mean, credit still the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. So, yeah. So, then they went to Jack Perry. Jack Perry with his look, with his beard and his hair, it's definitely much better. Much better for him as a look, I'd say. His scapegoat look. So, they went over to Jack Perry, and Jack said he meant what he said last week talking to Tony. So, yeah, I mean, quick sell words by Jack Perry, good stuff. This was entertaining. It's just when there's filler throughout the show, give or take. But, Chris Jericho for Shibata. Jericho reaction. His reaction at Dynasty was not great. Now leading into this new role of the Learning Tree, in which Big Bill, as Ricky Starks is on the out, Big Bill is looking to be recruited by the Learning Tree, Chris Jericho. So, but we get this match for the FTW title, FTW rules. And I will say, for a good point, it was entertaining. But I am curious as to where this is leaning to for Double or Nothing. Chris Jericho. I mean, it's hard to care about the FTW title, really. So, I mean, I don't know. But yeah, that's fine. So, hard shots back and forth with some chops. Jericho got a black bag. Manjanaki, he was at Winnipeg Jets, Colorado Avalanche game the other day. So he got a bag full of hockey pucks. So, there was hockey pucks littered in the middle of the ring. So, I mean, yeah. It was unique. But I guess it worked. It was a bit cheesy, but yeah, it worked. So Schwa got the offense. And then Jericho threw a hockey puck at Schwa. Got back the advantage. Like walls of Jericho, but Schwa fell out. So trash can, table involved. So one spot, so usually someone ends up wearing a trash can, when it comes out, unless it gets destroyed. So, trash can was out there. Shibata was wearing it, and there was kendo sticks. But Shibata was no selling the kendo stick shots through the trash can. Just kept coming forward and ended up headbutting Jericho with the trash can. Which, we haven't seen that before, I will say. Then they had a kendo stick out, and then there was a table set up in the end. So, Big Bill, I mentioned, trying to be courted by Jericho or recruited. Big chokeslam on Shibata through the table. Jericho followed up for the pin. 1, 2, 3, and Jericho retained the FTW title. So yeah. Well, Nightingale, she not in too of a pleasant mood. She did respond to the challenge made by Sky Blue and opted for challenge at the end of Rampage. Chris Statlander apologized for her actions last week, and Stokely Hathaway, he's hilarious, kind of went to a little bit of rant, and it was announced that Stokely and Chris are banned from ringside. So there. Claudio versus Brian Cage. Fun match. Fun build. Wasn't much of a build-up. Story, we'll see. They're certainly showcasing Claudio much more in being. Willer Yuta is still out. Moxley, again, the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. And Bryan Danielson still recovering from brutal match against Will Ospreay at Dynasty. So yeah. But yeah, this is a fun match. So Brian Cage showing off his power and a rolling suplex back in the ring. Then they actually traded 619s followed with lariats, both for near falls. Cage hit sky high for a near fall. Claudio hit the giant swing, which again, on a big guy like Cage, that's a tough outing. Then locked in a sharpshooter. Brian Cage tapped out. So yeah, big, good win for Claudio. The thing is, so we get Brian Cage, and obviously for weeks and months, Mole MC, affiliate. No one came out to protect Swerve when he was getting beaten down by this patriarchy. Not Brian Cage, not the Gates of Agony. Brian Cage was there, so Tony Khan did not mention if the Mogul MC are together, sold together, separate. I don't know. But it's certainly a thing that to take away from going from the opening segment to now. Rock and Roll, he was asked about, happenings about Trent, Chuck Taylor, Orange Cassidy, saying he doesn't know what side he's on, but says he's only hope for going forward, saying he's done with it. And they opts for match against Kyle O'Reilly on Rampage. So he just goes to that. Adam Copeland and Kyle O'Reilly. Then we see Copeland looked a bit dazed or a bit out of himself. O'Reilly praised Copeland, talking about his career and match him all against Alex Black. If he needs helping hand, he's there for him. And Copeland says he hears him and says, well, you got Rocky tonight. Rocky and Romero tonight, so good luck with that. Renee said good luck to Kyle as well. So there was that. Main event segments. Kenny Omega. Following made his return, he had the grand entrance from Justin Roberts. So, again, Kenny, have not seen him in months since diverticulitis. Looked well in a nice suit. He's out there. Obviously, the crowd was not great. Yeah. So, Kenny, so he was out there went over this process about how he was not well and was taken for 10 days, and doctors said, well, he was 24 hours away from dying, saying you're one of the lucky ones. And Kenny said, great story, Doc. So can you patch me up and get me back to Dynamite? He said it's not that so easy. So Kenny talked about, well, they need to get what's in you out of you. Saying that if it happens, they would have to fillet him open and he'd have to live with a bag for potentially the rest of his life. So Kenny said, what happens if he doesn't opt for surgery? So they said, well, he basically has a ticking time bomb in him. It says he doesn't know when, doesn't know where, but it could go off and you could be having surgery at any moment or wake up. He's having surgery. So Kenny said that he thought for a bit that he thought he was going to have to come out and tell people that he has to retire. But said after a while he watched IC and he saw Ospreay versus Brian Nelson and he would shake and realize that he needs to, and he misses being back in the ring. So doesn't care if it's 5% or even 1% chance to be back in the ring. So talked about the Bucks being their EVP power, but it says there's still one left. And all of a sudden we hear Kazuchika Okada's music play. Drop, and yeah. Big thing. So, the rivalry in New Japan. So, Okada, I was basically waiting for Rampage to start. But I didn't check. I wasn't looking at the clock. I was just like, when is Rampage going to start? So, they locked eyes, a promo. So, at first, Kenny said something in Japanese. And then Kenny was like, well, some rivalry we had back in New Japan said, why not give me a few months and we'll sell it in here to see who's the best in the spring. So Okada said, Kenny, I'm sorry, but I'm the best belt machine now. So Jack Perry jumped him from behind. Kenny would follow up. He actually hit a dragon suplex, but was favoring his midsection. So, I mean, Kenny talked about what he's talking about. I mean, I'm sure Kenny is, well, he's just not 100% for getting back in the ring, is my guess. Because he wouldn't have taken what he took last night's show if he wasn't, almost healthy. Almost. So, numbers game, too much of an edge. Perry got a chair and a hit in the midsection. Of Omega. Omega's obviously writhing in pain. Young Bucks come out and were confused, conflicted, talking about he's our friend, the EVP, etc. And you can just tell with how Omega was getting up and how the Bucks were lined up. The Bucks then hit the EVP trigger on Omega as he's trying to get up, and there you go. So then FTR, after all this, FTR comes out and they're like, they've had enough, and that's that. So, save Omega from any further damage. They bring out Gurney, carry out Omega on it, and then that was basically how Dynamite went off the air. And then they went to the back to start Rampage. Kenny was lined up in front of an ambulance, and Omega was obviously pissed, hurt, and Matt told him, I'm sorry, Kenny, it's just business. I love you to death, but change the world, right? So then they throw him off the gurney, and they tell him, say nonchalantly, hey, can we get some help for him here? Yeah. So, yeah. But that was Dynamite for you guys. Briefly saw Rampage. Yeah. So, anyways, guys, thank you all for joining me. See you guys perhaps Sunday or Monday for Backlash review. So keep eyes posted for that. But thank you guys all. See you guys next time. That's AEW review. So peace out. See you guys soon.